We begin with the latest developments following the arrest in that major Pentagon intelligence leak.
That's right. 21-year-old Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira was arrested just yesterday. He's suspected of leaking those classified documents online, and he'll make his first court appearance today. Teixeira was arrested at his home in Massachusetts yesterday by heavily armed FBI agents without incident. Take a look.
The Justice Department arrested Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information.
Teixeira's arrest comes after the leaked documents raised alarm bells within the Biden administration and among lawmakers and key allies. The sensitive materials potentially including hundreds of pages of intelligence about Russian efforts in Ukraine and spying efforts on U.S. allies. NBC News Justice Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian joins us now for details on all of this. Ken, good morning. So this is big. It's been likened to the Pentagon Papers with Daniel Ellsberg and Edward Snowden's WikiLeaks efforts. Both of those incidents, some say, were driven by specific political agendas. But in this case, Ken, do we know the motive of the suspect? What might that be?
Zinkley, good morning. It does appear that the biggest and most serious leak in a decade is the result of a young man who simply wanted to impress his friends. That's what we're hearing from friends and associates of Jack Teixeira, who were involved in this chat room where he was posting these classified documents for more than a year. They're saying that he didn't do this to harm an adversary. He didn't do this to blow the whistle. They say that he was very much a loyal and patriotic member of the military, although one with extremist and potentially far-right views, but that he was sharing this material to give these younger people an idea of what war was like and to impress them. We've really never seen anything like this in the pantheon of these major leaks. But this has had enormous significance, and he's now facing extremely serious charges. You saw those heavily armed FBI agents arrest him wearing tactical gear. That's because he's known to have weapons, and they were not taking any chances there. And it shows you the seriousness of this case.
And Ken, we know these documents are said to have been on the social platform Discord for quite some time. Do we have any insight into the scope and scale of these leaks?
We do, actually. According to Teixeira's associates, again, talking to journalists, there were about 300 or so classified documents that he posted, all told. NBC News has seen about 53 of those. Other outlets have approximately 100. So it isn't so much the volume, which doesn't compare to what Edward Snowden did, for example. It's the significance and the recentness of these documents. Some as recent as just a few weeks ago, offering snapshots of, for example, the vulnerabilities in Ukraine's air defenses, and very embarrassing revelations that the United States is spying on allies, and even worse for the people I'm talking to inside the intelligence community, exposing the fact that the U.S. has thoroughly penetrated all levels of the Russian government and military with communications intercepts. And why that's so significant is once that's exposed, it's believed that the Russians will simply change how they communicate, and a lot of that intelligence will go away. So a big loss for U.S. national security.
For sure. I mean, Ken, what kind of charges could Teixeira be facing when he makes his first court appearance today?
There are a number of possible charges involving the mishandling of classified information, but the comments of Attorney General Merrick Garland yesterday made it pretty clear that this is an Espionage Act case. That's the most serious statute from 1917 that can be applied to people who disclose classified information. And the worst parts of it, the parts where the motive is to harm the United States, can carry the death penalty. Other parts of it, for just merely feloniously disclosing national defense information, carry a penalty of 10 or 20 years in prison. And in fact, the Espionage Act is one of the statutes cited in the warrant that the FBI used to search Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's compound. This is a much different case, and Jack Teixeira is facing a very, very serious set of charges.
Definitely all eyes on this case. Ken Delanian, thank you.
New this morning, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill late last night banning most abortions in the state after 6 weeks. It is now one of the strictest abortion laws in the country. The Republican-dominated state house approved the bill yesterday, largely along party lines after debating for hours.
This is not reasonable because it amounts to an outright ban.
Here we value life from conception to the casket.
Civil rights attorney and former prosecutor Kristen Gibbons-Fedden joins us now. Good morning, Kristen. How does this new law differ from Florida's existing abortion law?
Well, this new law represents a significant change compared to the previous legislation. Before the Dobbs ruling in 2022, Florida followed the framework set by Roe v. Wade, which allowed abortions up to the point of fetal viability, generally around 24 weeks. But in 2022, Florida enacted House Bill 5, which banned abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. This new law faced legal challenges due to Florida's constitutional guaranteed right to privacy and still has not been decided. But things didn't stop there, right? So last night, Florida's attempting to further restrict abortion access by passing a new law that bans most abortions after just 6 weeks. And that is a major crucial shift because many women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. And unlike that 15-week ban, this new legislation does provide exemptions in cases of incest or rape, but the woman must submit documents like a restraining order and police report in order to even qualify for that exemption. Under the old law, a woman in Florida who discovered that she was pregnant at 10 weeks would have had the legal right to obtain an abortion. However, under this new 6-week ban, that same woman would be unable to obtain access to abortion services unless she met that strict criteria for exemptions.
And Kristen, you rightly touched on this, right? We know the Florida Supreme Court is expected to issue a decision on the constitutionality of the 15-week ban that is already in effect. Where exactly does that stand? How could that potentially affect this specific law? And might we see this elsewhere?
Well, that is still within the briefing stages, which means the court has not really even heard all of the arguments on the papers, and they will be scheduling oral argument. But the precedent in the court is the constitutional right to pre-viability abortion. And I think it's difficult to really predict what the Florida Supreme Court ruling on that is going to be. But I think one of the things that's really important is that Governor DeSantis has appointed several conservative justices, which may have shifted the court's ideological balance, which could potentially result in a more favorable outcome for the ban. But I think it's important to note that courts are unpredictable. The justices should be examining legal arguments and precedents closely before making the decision. And precedent in previous cases in Florida have ruled that the right to privacy is enumerated under the Florida Constitution, and that protects a woman's right to access an abortion.
Florida now has one of the strictest abortion laws in the country. So what does this mean for abortion access across the South?
Well, I think it's important to note that this would be the Florida law. And, you know, life for women post-Dobbs, in this post-Dobbs world, is challenging. Women's productive rights have become basically a state-held political football. And I think one of the things that's really important is that Florida has always been a place of hope for women, historically, to get an abortion in otherwise hostile South. But it looks like, you know, now it's going to be very similar to the other southern states. I think it's also important to note that this is going to significantly and disproportionately affect minorities and people of color, particularly as we are seeing rising mortality rates in women of color experiencing health barriers.
Kristen Gibbons-Fendon, thank you so much for that analysis.
And now to Ireland, where President Biden is wrapping up his trip today with a visit to the area where his family is from. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memley joins us now from County Mayo. Good morning, Mike. President Biden had a very busy schedule yesterday. What can you tell us about it?
Well, you know, all along as we've been following President Biden throughout this trip in Ireland, we talked about how you can divide up his itinerary into two broad categories. There's the personal visits to his ancestral home counties, County Louth on Wednesday, today here in County Mayo. And then there's the official business that you typically see whenever a president travels abroad. And yesterday that was certainly the case. He visited with Ireland's president, sat down with Ireland's Prime Minister, where they talked about important issues like the economy and keeping those Good Friday peace accord for Northern Ireland on track. He also spoke to Ireland's Parliament, where there was a bit of an emotional note at times, and he talked about the significance of coming back to where his great-great-grandparents came from. Take a listen.
If you forgive the poor attempted Irish, Táimé seo bhaile, I'm at home.
At one point, the president talked about how he's nearer to the end of his career than the beginning. He noted his age and said this was one of the great honors of his life. Another emotional moment, he talked about his late son, Beau, who passed away 8 years ago from brain cancer. And he said it should have been him speaking to the parliament today and not him.
And we know you're in County Mayo, where the president is planning to spend part of the day. What's on his agenda there?
Yeah, this is also going to be quite an emotional day for the president. One of his first stops, in fact, when he lands in County Mayo, is going to be to visit a hospice center that was dedicated in honor of his late son, Beau. He's also going to be going to a heritage site where they're tracing the genealogy, learning even more about the Blewett side of the Biden family tree. And then, as you may be able to hear, they're planning a bit of a party here for President Biden in Ballina, where his great-great-grandfather, Ed Blewett, came from. There is going to be a speech that the president delivers later tonight after some musical performances. The president is going to focus his remarks on the resilience of the Irish people, the importance of the Irish American community back home, and how the values of the Irish Americans, dignity, treating everyone as their equals, have really informed his political career. The mayor of Ballina has been doing some interviews, and he said he wouldn't be surprised, perhaps, if President Biden announces he's running for a second term here. I think that's unlikely, but we're certainly going to be listening closely to what the president has to say later today.
And we can definitely hear the music in the background from the festivities there. But, Mike, what are some of the president's priorities once he returns back to Washington?
Well, one of the items at the top of the list we heard the president address yesterday, he talked about that massive leak of classified information. They told us yesterday morning that they were close to finding the suspect. We now know he was briefed on the arrest of that suspect late last night. The president's also going to be coming back where the abortion rights battle is only heating up. The fact that the abortion pill, mifepristone, may be coming off the shelves in a matter of weeks. His administration is trying to plan their response if that comes. And then looking ahead to the next few months, it's all going to be about that battle with congressional Republicans over spending and the debt ceiling. That could really consume much of the summer for President Biden as we face the risk of a potential debt default.
Okay, Mike Memoli in Ireland. Mike, thanks so much.
And now to the former president, Donald Trump, and that multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit he's facing here in New York State. Trump left the Manhattan office of New York Attorney General Letitia James yesterday after spending 8 hours answering questions for a deposition in the case. The $250 million lawsuit accuses Trump and the Trump Organization of business fraud. A.G. James herself was present for a portion of his testimony. Trump's lawyer issued a statement saying the former president was willing and eager to testify before the Attorney General during a deposition last summer related to the case. Trump invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination more than 400 times. You'll remember just a week ago he was arraigned on criminal charges in a separate case related to the Stormy Daniels hush money probe.
More potential jurors will be questioned today in the second day of jury selection for the Dominion voting system's defamation trial against Fox News.
Dominion is suing Fox for more than $1.5 billion, accusing the network of damaging its reputation by promoting false claims following the 2020 presidential election. So to dig in, we've got NBC News correspondent Emily Ketta here with more. Emily, obviously all eyes on this. Jury selection was yesterday, so we're a day out. What exactly are they asking jury members? What are they looking for?
Yeah, so several hundred potential jurors descended on Wilmington yesterday, and they faced a series of questions. And in this early stage, the judge and the lawyers, they were trying to dive into and establish whether or not people could be impartial in approaching this high-stakes trial. Some of the questions you're seeing on your screen there. Do you personally know any employees of Dominion or Fox? Do you personally know? And it lists out a couple of names: Trump allies, Mike Lindell, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell. Have you or a family member or close friend ever worked in a newsroom? And then do you avoid any Fox News programs? Both sides, Fox and Dominion, and watching this very closely, because come Monday, they get the chance to strike down or eliminate 6 jurors, both sides, before the jury is set.
And Emily, there's a lot at stake here for both sides, not just the $1.6 billion figure. So what are some of the potential consequences depending on the outcome?
Well, I think first, this is a unique opportunity and a rare glance into kind of the unfiltered behind-the-scenes world of Fox News, this top-rated cable news network. We talk about those text messages between some of the hosts, actually ridiculing some of former President Trump's allies. And then I think, secondly, I've heard some lawyers call this the Super Bowl equivalent for libel law, defamation law. And you really have to take into consideration Fox's defense for that. They're arguing that they should be protected under First Amendment protections because they were covering something that was newsworthy. These allegations made by President Trump and his allies were newsworthy, they say, at the time. They argue Dominion has taken an extreme view of defamation law that would stop the media in its tracks. So this will definitely be closely watched by a number of figures from the media to also definitely constitutional lawyers.
And Emily, as you've laid out well, right, we're in jury selection right now. But once the case gets started, how long should we expect the timeline to be? And also probably some big names, right?
So the jury is expected to be set on Monday. Opening arguments will begin right after that on Monday. And the trial is expected to last for about 6 weeks. Definitely some big names anticipated to take the stand. Fox's biggest names. One potential is the chair. You can see on your screen there, Rupert Murdoch, the chair of Fox Corporation. Also some of the most popular hosts, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, all potentials in taking the stand. Again, leaning into that aspect that this is a high-stakes trial that will be closely watched.
High stakes with big implications. Emily Aketa, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
The suspect accused of murdering Cash App founder Bob Lee will be arraigned in a San Francisco court today. The tech executive was stabbed last week and died later at the hospital. Yesterday, police arrested 38-year-old Nima Momeni of Emeryville. The police chief said Lee and Momeni knew each other. He did not provide further details, saying the investigation was ongoing.
And the mother of the 6-year-old boy who shot his teacher in Virginia has been arrested. The Newport News Police Department says Deja Taylor was arrested on charges of child neglect and failing to secure her handgun. Taylor was released after posting a $5,000 bond and will have a status hearing today. Her arrest comes more than 3 months after police say her son shot and wounded first-grade teacher Abby Zwerner.
New this morning, the toxic industrial fire that's been burning in Indiana since Tuesday is finally out. That's according to the mayor of the city of Richmond, Dave Snow, who sent out this tweet last night. Mayor Snow also confirming that samples of air and water continue to be collected with an evacuation order still in place. EPA officials have confirmed that the air in the area does contain dangerous toxins such as asbestos, with more testing to come.
Also this morning, we're taking a closer look at the torrential flooding in South Florida we covered just yesterday. Hundreds of Broward County residents have been relocated to emergency shelters after the storm flooded houses, causing significant damage. The area saw just over 2 feet of rain in 24 hours. For perspective, that's an average of 1 month's worth of rainfall for this time of year in Fort Lauderdale. The Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport is expected to reopen today at 9 a.m., but public schools remain closed. That's due to the intense saturation and many abandoned vehicles. Officials are still warning that roads are unsafe and drivers should use the utmost caution as the region now begins a very long and intense cleanup process. So let's get an update on what's going on and a check at your Morning News Now weather forecast.
Meteorologist Angie Lassman joins us now. Good morning, Angie.
Morning, ladies. Yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting. This has actually set a record for the state of Florida for the most rain in 24 hours in history. The previous record, of course, was from a tropical system, no surprise, and that was held by Key West with ample amounts of rain. But this system, of course, wasn't tropical. Nonetheless, it brought a lot of rain, and we know that with climate change, the atmosphere can hold a little more moisture as it gets warmer, and we'll likely see these events happening more often. Now, as far as what's going on right now, satellite and radar looks a little better. Last night, not so much. They had more rounds of rain on top of what that 25 inches that they already picked up a couple days ago. They added more, but right now they're getting a much needed break. It doesn't mean it's going to stay like that. We could likely see some more showers and even a few thunderstorms through the day today, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. And that low pressure system we've been watching for days, it continues to spread some rain across parts of the Carolinas and into the southeast. We are going to continue to see added rainfall for folks in that region through the day today as well. How about the heat? Have you noticed? I'm sure you have. If you've stepped outside anywhere from basically the Midwest to the Northeast, you probably have thought to yourself, it feels like summer, because it did. Yesterday, we saw numerous records being broken. Today, we're headed to the 80s in Minneapolis, 82 degrees, 25 degrees above where we should be for this time of year. Chicago hits 82, Cleveland at 81, Philly ends up at 85 degrees. And these records, they're going to keep on breaking likely through the day today. Over 13 states could see some of these record highs this afternoon. Central Park yesterday hit 90 degrees. The last time we saw 90 on that date was back in the 1970s. So it tells you just how unprecedented this heat is. Temperatures, meanwhile, as we get into the later parts of today in Scranton, we could hit 91 degrees. That would break a record. New York, 86 degrees. That would break a record. Even Detroit is going to be close to record breaking with a high of 80 this afternoon. And that current record, I should say, held at 81 degrees. Even tomorrow, the heat is still on, not quite as above normal as what it'll be today. But still, we're running into the upper 60s in New York, Pittsburgh at 77 degrees. And by the time we get into the weekend, we'll really start to see things moderating out. So if you're someone that is a fan of spring, It will be back. Don't worry. We'll end up back into the upper 60s to round out the weekend and head into next week. And we'll be at 60 in New York on Tuesday. Check out Detroit, 77 on Sunday. My mom is very sad about this. Monday, it'll be 48 degrees. And we're even talking about some snow in parts of Michigan. And it's all thanks to this system that's moving out of the Rockies. It's going to eventually bring some severe weather potential to folks through the plains, at least for the day today. Basically, from Nebraska to Oklahoma, we could see that. I'll tell you more about the impacts here in a moment. And then it continues marching east. There's some of that snow we'll track and additional rainfall for parts of the east as well as we get into the weekend. So notice the mid-Atlantic could see some of this shower activity. We'll see more of the snow focused towards the upper Midwest. But there's the severe weather that we're going to be tracking. These storm hazards are going to be mainly the hail. We'll also see the wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour and even some isolated tornadoes. When we take a closer look, some of us, specifically this area and parts of Kansas, could see hail up to baseball size, 2 inches in diameter. So we'll be watching closely for that. And that'll be something we'll watch for 13 million people again tomorrow. If you live in the Little Rock area, Springfield, St. Louis, Alexandria, Louisiana, you're going to want to watch and pay attention into the afternoon and evening hours here as we get through the day. Here's some of that tennis ball hail potential that we see tomorrow. It does include Springfield. It includes Shreveport and Little Rock. Another day that we will keep a close eye on that. When it comes to our rainfall chances, Charlotte, Atlanta ends up maybe picking up another ½ an inch, but it looks like the highest amounts are going to be along the coast. New Orleans ends up at about 3 inches of rainfall here by the time we get through the weekend, ladies.
What a week. I mean, if the U.S. has one thing, it's variation. Snowball-sized hail and sun.
Something for everybody.
Angie Lassman, thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.